Gopi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Usman Parang Sapariprajapacharya Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna and welcome to all the devotees online. Thank you very much for your attendance as we cover Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 9, verses 12 to 17, the passing away of Bhishma. Om Jnanatime Vandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasme Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuveva cha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sharva Sastra Piyusha Sarva Vedeka Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnarya Sarva Lokai Prada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kali Dvando Didaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churn from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prominent fruit of all the Vedas, O you enrich with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, the life breath of the Vaishnava devotees. O Lord, you are the sun which has risen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are Lord Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pataya Premavachasharayate Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namaste. O Srimad Bhagavatam, offer respectful obeisance unto you. By reading you, one attains transcendental bliss. For his soul bursts in pure love of God upon the reader. You always be served by everyone. For your incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madhika Bandho Matsange Madguru Mahadana Manishwaraka Madbhagya Manananda Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. Asadu sadhu tadai natini chochataraka hanam chakada chinmam premna ritkate spura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O give us saintliness around saintly, our love to the very fallen. Please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest. Mahatma told, accompanied by pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadhyasya Yatonvayaditarata Charte Swabhigna Swarat Tene Brahma Idaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatra Tirsago Masha Damna Svena Sadani Rastakokam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, all pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations and is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmanji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed in delusion as one is bewildered by illusory representation of water seen in far land seen on water. Only because of him, the material universe is temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent, transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Parayana Upasha Sabhya Kalabasmin Yuge Janamanda Sumanda Madeo Mandabagya Padrita. O learned one in this age of Kali, many about short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Narayam Namaskrityam Narachevam Narathamam Devim Saraswati Yasam Stoche Mudirayat. Before deciding Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance to the personality of Godhead Narayan. Unto Narayan, we should the most human being, and the Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and Rishila Vyasa, the author. Savaypum Saparodharmo Yatho Bhaktira Dokchaja Hoitikya Pratyata Yayatma Suprasaditi. The supreme occupation, Dharma of all humanity is that by which man can attain to loving devotional service under the transcendent Lord. such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janaya Tyusa Vairagyam Jnanam Chayat Hoitakam. By rendering devotional service under the personality of God as Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Vadanti tat tat pravidas tattam yach gnanamadvayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. Shrushrushoshadanasya vasudeva kataruchi syan mahatsevaya vipra punyatirtha nishevanat. Otherwise, born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shranutam swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana rhythantastoya badrani vidunati suritsatam. Shri Krishna, the personality of God, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart and a benefactor, truthful devotee, cleanses desire from material enjoyment from the heart of the devotees, develop the urge to hear messages which are in themselves virtues when properly heard and chanted. Nasta Prayasha Badreshu Nitam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatuttama Sloki Bhakti Bhavati Neshtiki. By regular attendance in the classes in the Bhagavatam and the rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service under the personality of God, and whose praise or transcendental song is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam based on teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder chair of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna, and welcome again. Let us cover some feedback from any devotees from Canto 1, Chapter 9, verses 1 to 11. Please share anything that caught your attention last week when we covered these verses, what you took home, what you found interesting, what you decided to memorize, or even apply in your life. Please share. Madhachana Siddhi says, every time we become proud, we must think of Lord Sudarshan Chakra, how the Lord taught him the lesson. Yes, Krishna loves his devotees, and therefore if the devotees become proud, then Krishna kindly, lovingly will chastise them and bring them back to the proper attitude of not being proud. In different situations, one may be proud, proud of one's abilities, proud of one's achievements, proud of one's service, proud of one's relationship with Krishna. So many ways one may become proud. And often the Lord may also put his devotees in situations where they become proud to teach us. So it may not necessarily be that the devotees themselves become proud, especially pure devotees, but Krishna placed them in such situations so that we can be taught the lesson, not to be proud. All right, any others? Rasaraj Prabhu and Atma Priya, as he says, learn, love, and leave a legacy. This is this should be our goal in life. We come to this world due to our past karma, but by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we are learning how to live. Most people are wasting their time because they haven't learned how to live in this world. And their life in this world is really a sentence, life sentence, an eternal sentence of condemnation. It's Prabhupada, in so many purports, would say it's embarrassing for a living entity to be in this material world. It's embarrassing. So we are being embarrassed due to our past karma. But by the Prabhupada's mercy, we are learning how to live in such a way that we can develop our loving relationship with Krishna. And as we develop our loving relationship with Krishna, we can try to see how we can assist Krishna in his mission. And in this way, we can then leave a legacy behind, just like Srila Prabhupada. Shamananda Prabhu says, Hare Krishna, thank you for weekly nectar. We see how Krishna is always making some arrangements so that his devotees like Bhishma, Arjuna, etc., in spotlight and glorified for eternity, and for all of us to learn from them. This is really amazing to see. Yes. We see the same in the case of Srila Prabhupada. Krishna can easily spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could spread Krishna consciousness all over. Lord Nityananda could have spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. It's not an impossible task. But the Lord did not do that. Why? He wanted to glorify Srila Prabhupada. So he left the glory for Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada also could have spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. He didn't do that. Why? He left the glory for his followers. For those that want to get some credit for the glories of being able to serve Srila Prabhupada or help Srila Prabhupada in his mission. So this is sharing the wisdom, sharing the nectar, sharing the credits. The Lord loves to do this. The pure devotees love to do this. Nobody wants to go back alone. Nobody wants to go back home alone. They want to go with everyone because we all belong in the spiritual world. Mala says, only a great personality can adjust or change details of the religious principles according to time, place, and circumstance. Yes. We may adjust due to our sentiments, our sense gratification, our false ideas, false ego. But the pure devotee, they know how to adjust, not because of their own sense gratification or needs, but actually for the benefit and the welfare of all living entities. So they know how to adjust, and that adjustment will be pleasing to Krishna. Right, thank you for everyone's feedback. Let us proceed. So we are covering today, Bhishmadev pacifies and encourages the Pandavas, verses 12 to 17. Siraj Prabhu also says, grains and fire are good conductors of consciousness. Good. All right, so I'd like to ask everyone a question. And the question is, what do you see on the screen? What do you see? Please share what you see. I like as many devotees as possible to type in the chat, what do you see? And if those that don't want to type, you're most welcome to unmute and share. Shama says a parrot. Mala says a parrot flying. Madhachana Siddhi says parrot is flying. Shamananda says colorful parrot. Sukha. Good. Any other takes? Any other suggestions? What do you see? Sukadev Goswami says parrot. Sharina says Krishna, parrot, and the rainbow. Good. So I'm specifically talking about the picture in the center. Even though Krishna is there on the side, I'm specifically looking at the picture in the center. What do you see? Any others? Okay, all done. All right, good. So in today's lesson, today's verses, Vasaraj Prabhu says, parrot flying in the sky. Good. So today's verses, Bhishmadev is going to enlighten us by the mercy of Yudhishthira Maharaj, who is now despondent, depressed, heartbroken. And he is in that situation by the mercy of Krishna. So ultimately, by the mercy of Krishna, we are going to be able to change our perspective to situations, incidents, and life. And I'm going to share the conclusion in relation to this picture that you're seeing, which all of you have shared. It's a parrot, colorful parrot, flying. And the perspective that I like to share is when we see anything like this bird, we should not just see through the lens of our eyes, but we should see through the lens of eyes tainted with Krishna. We should see every situation, not just this picture. This picture is just an example. We want to see every situation, every aspect, every circumstance of our life through the eyes tainted with Krishna, through the eyes tainted with love for Krishna, through the eyes tainted with those things related to Krishna. So now I'll ask the question again. And this time, most of you answered using the first lens of your eyes. I do not want you to use your eyes. I want you to use your eyes tainted with Krishna, Krishna's devotees, those things related to Krishna, Krishna's energies, Krishna's love for Krishna. I want you to use those eyes. Now with those eyes, looking at the same picture, what can you tell me? What do you see? Please type. Now what do you see? Anyone see anything different? Right, let's see. Shamananda says Sukadev Goswami. Good. Shama says a living entity. Good. And you could extend that, a living entity that is a servant of Krishna. All right, let me give you some examples. We see a servant of Garuda. We see Srimad Bhagavatam. We see Krishna as Krishna's creation. We see Krishna as the perfect artist. We see a living entity that's imprisoned due to separation from Krishna or forgetfulness of Krishna. We see a living entity that has a greater power than the human beings, yet still caged in the material world. We see a living entity exhibiting material desires. Externally beautifully looking, but still suffering like a fish out of water. So in this way, we can start to see this parrot. We can even relate first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where the parrot that was stolen, that memorized Bhagavad Gita, and the parrot would recite the Bhagavad Gita every day. When we see the parrot, we can remember Srila Prabhupada talking about how to chant. We should not chant like the parrot. So just one bird, I shared so many ways we could see this bird through the lens, or what we call Krishna lens, and not just your eye lens. Similarly, every situation we should see in this way, and Bhishma Dev is going to expand on that. So that is the section or the topic that we're going to be covering. Text 12. So the Pandavas are now in front of Bhishma Dev. Bhishma Dev, with loving tears, saw the Pandavas dressed in great royalty, and now Bhishma Dev begins to speak. And this was all arranged by Krishna, because Krishna wanted to glorify Bhishmadev. Krishna wanted to show the consciousness and the glorious position of Bhishmadev. Because most people misunderstood Bhishmadev that he was on the wrong side. So Krishna is now making this arrangement to really glorify Bhishmadev. Aho kastam aho nyayam yadyuyam dharmanandana jivitum nar hata klishtam vipra dharma chutashraya. Bhishmadev said, oh, what terrible sufferings and what terrible injustice you good souls had to suffer for being the sons of religion personified. You did not deserve to remain alive under those tribulations, yet you were protected by the Brahmanas, God, and religion. Bhishmadev is on his deathbed, and he is now sharing his own lamentation and heart that the Pandavas, they were good souls, and they went through terrible suffering and terrible injustice. So the famous question of how come if they are good souls, they are suffering? Why do bad things happen to good people? I'm such a good person. Why, am I going through this? I didn't do anything wrong. So these questions will be answered by Bhishmadev. But Bhishmadev makes a very, very important point, that they were good souls, yet they went through so much tribulations and they survived. Why? Because they were protected by the Brahmanas, the Lord, and religion. Prabhupada in the purport says, Yudhishthira was disturbed due to the great massacre in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Bhishmadev could understand this, and therefore he spoke first of the terrible sufferings of Maharaj Yudhishthira. So when Yudhishthira Maharaj appeared, Bhishmadev could detect that he was despondent. And therefore, Bhishmadev began to pacify Maharaj Yudhishthira by revealing the actual situation of the suffering that the Pandavas went through. He was put into difficulty by injustice only, and the battlefield of Kurukshetra was fought just to counteract this injustice. Therefore, he should not regret the great massacre. He wanted to point out particularly that they were always protected by the Brahmanas, the Lord, and religious principles. As long as they were protected by these three important items, there was no cause of disappointment. So these three, the Lord, Achyuta, the Brahmanas, the Vipra, and religious principles, Dharma. We want to be protected by these three aspects. So Vipra, Dharma, Achyuta, Shraya. Thus, Bhishmadev encouraged Yudhishthira Maharaj to dissipate his despondency. As long as a person is fully in cooperation with the wishes of the Lord, guided by the bona fide Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and strictly following religious principles, one has no cause for despondency, however trying the circumstances of life. Bhishmadev, as one of the authorities in the line, wanted to impress this point upon the Pandavas. So the first most important lesson we are learning is how to live our lives so that we can be under the protection of Achyuta, under the protection of the Vipras, and under the protection of Dharma. And if we live our lives under the protection of these three important protectors, then no matter what happens in our life, we should know that there is no cause for despondencies. So consider Achyuta, Krishna, the Lord. We can take shelter of the Lord through his glories, through his words, like the Bhagavatam. And we can also take shelter of the Lord through his deity form. We should have both forms of shelter. Every single devotee can embrace both forms of shelter. We should not just accept one, but we should accept both. We should be hearing, we should be glorifying the Supreme Lord, hearing and chanting the holy name from scripture. That should be one form of taking shelter of achyuta. And the second form is we should be serving the deities. And serving the deities would mean in any way practical. We can do very basic menial service to serve the deities. We can directly serve the deities. We can indirectly serve the deities. So we should try to be connected somewhere or other to serving the deity form of the Lord. It is very, very beneficial. So this is achyuta, taking shelter, achyuta. Then Vipra Prabhupada says the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas, we should be taking shelter. That means having mentors, having guides. We find Yudhishthir Maharaj, Maharaj Parikshit, Dashrath Maharaj, they all had ministers. Brahmana ministers, Kshatriya ministers, there are different ministers to guide them in different fields. So we also can take shelter of different devotees that are expert in different fields and learn from them. By having a mentor, in most cases, we short circuit our education in terms of time-wise. It saves us so much. Just like by us learning from Srila Prabhupada, lifetimes and lifetimes of time is saved by surrendering Srila Prabhupada's instructions and embracing that. Otherwise, it would take billions and billions and billions of lifetimes to learn what is in Prabhupada's purpose. So Prabhupada has distilled all the appropriate, relevant, important instructions into his Bhaktivedanta purpose. It's inconceivable the amount or the glorious feat that Srila Prabhupada has achieved in helping souls, presenting the most exalted education, wisdom, realization, lessons in his Bhaktivedanta purpose. So having a mentor, having a guide is extremely important. And by having a guide, we become sheltered. Whether it's Shiksha Guru, Diksha Gurus, different devotees that are expert in learning from them. And then the third is principles of Dharma. We also have to follow. For example, the four principles: no meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication, chanting the holy name of Krishna, being respectful, being kind, etc., being compassionate. These are principles of Dharma. So embracing principles of Dharma, aligning our life that is based on Dharma with the guidance and shelter of the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas, and by taking shelter of the Lord, we will be protected from every single situation, no matter how trying the circumstance may be. So we should not be distracted. Why am I in such a difficult situation when I am following and taking shelter of these protectors? That's a wrong question to ask. We should have firm faith that because I'm following these three protectors, no matter how trying the situation may be, I will always come out successful on the opposite side. Because between this battle of Dharma and Adharma, religion and irreligion, Dharma will always, always, always be successful. It may take time, but Dharma always excels. The truth will always prevail, no matter what. So this is the first lesson that Bhishmadev is instructing Yudhishthira Maharaj, that because you have taken shelter, you are Dharmaraj, you always fully surrendered to Achyuta. You have so many glorious mentors like Vyasadeva, Kripacharya, so many. And you are the epitome of Dharma. Therefore, for you, there's no question of despondency. Understand that whatever you have gone through, the trying circumstance and the situation, that may be for some reason, but you are not the cause of it. Why? Because you were living your life according to these three aspects of protectors. 13. Samstite tirata pando pritabala prajavadu yusmat krite bahun kleshan prapta tokavati muhun. As far as my daughter-in-law Kunti is concerned, upon the great General Pandu's death, she became a widow with many children, and therefore she suffered greatly. And when you were grown up, she suffered a great deal also because of your actions. Now Bhishmadev's attention is gone to his daughter-in-law, Queen Kunti. And we see that even though Bhishmadev is a great Kshatriya, he's a warrior, and warriors are generally very, very strong-hearted. But we find that Bhishmadev is extremely soft-hearted and very lovingly he's revealing that, yes, even Queen Kunti suffered so much unfairly. So he's really feeling for Queen Kunti as well. Prabhupada writes in the purport, the sufferings of Queen Kunti are doubly lamented. She suffered greatly because of early widowhood and to get her minor children brought up in the royal family. And when the children were grown up, she continued to suffer because of her son's actions. So her suffering continued. This means that she was destined to suffer by providence. And this one is to tolerate without being disturbed. So she suffered doubly, undue suffering, and she's a great devotee. We just heard how exalted Queen Kunti is from her beautiful prayers. Yet, even though she was Krishna's aunt, she suffered. So we cannot equate a pure devotee equals no suffering. We cannot equate spiritual life, practice of spiritual life, with no suffering. Most people don't want material life because it's plagued with so many varieties of suffering. So therefore they look for an alternative lifestyle. An alternative lifestyle means that they embrace spiritual lifestyle. The challenge is when you now embrace spiritual lifestyle and you come into spiritual arena, now you also think, okay, I don't want any suffering, and you get suffering. Well, this is unfair. What is this? How can this be Krishna consciousness? So Bhishmadev is revealing, and Prabhupada in the purport is emphasizing that spiritual life does not mean no suffering. Pure devotion, pure devotees does not mean no suffering. Externally, they will be suffering. Circumstances will be there. Just look at Bhishmadev in this picture. He had to suffer those pierces, those arrows been piercing his body. But every single arrow that was piercing his body was a loving exchange between him and Arjuna because of his perspective. He didn't see enemy. He saw a loving grandchild, loving student. Similarly, we need to understand and change the perspective of our life, or perspective of how we see things. And when we change the perspective of how we see things, even though there may be suffering, because of our perspective, we may not experience that suffering. So Prabhupada is sharing the first principle in relation to suffering. This means that she was destined to suffer by providence. And this one has to tolerate without being disturbed. Suffering caused by providence has to be tolerated. We accept it, and when we tolerate that, we then do not become disturbed. Bhishmadev is now lying on his deathbed, and still he's able to exhibit great apathy, compassion, feeling for his loved ones. We find that in the Vedic system, there is this unit of extended family. The culture of those who have been raised in Vedic system is that they understand that we all belong to one family. We belong to the Achyuta Gotra, we belong to Vasudev Kutum, we belong to the family of Vasudeva, family of Krishna. So because we belong to Krishna's family, naturally we have a connection, and everybody would feel each other's happiness and distress. So Bhishmadev was feeling the pain that the Pandavas, Queen Kunti, Yudhishthira went through as his own pain. This is how the upbringing was. Nowadays, we find that the family unit slowly, extended family is now becoming, single families, even single families are now breaking. This is Kali Yuga. And people feel less and less for their family. Their focus becomes more and more on themselves. But Vedic system was always, the culture was to support others, to feel for others. Naturally with Krishna in the center. Now, Bhishmadev is lying on the battlefield. He's able to be conscious of the suffering that the Pandavas have gone through and feel for that, feel for them. At the same time, he's going to reveal how he's able to detach himself at the appropriate time and focus on the Supreme Lord when the time is required. For this, one has to purify one's mind. One has to be pure. Therefore, we find in the center the picture of the subtle body. The mind has these different activities of vasana, unfulfilled material desires, bhavana, emotions, and tarka, logic. And constantly we are being plagued with these three aspects, trying to fulfill desires, being emotional, trying to figure things out. So Bhishmadev is teaching us how to live in this world by purifying the mind and purifying these activities, so that by bringing Krishna in the center, we purify our material desires. And we only desire spiritual desires. We want to purify our emotions, and we want to purify our logic. We want to apply logic, emotion, and desires in a spiritual direction in relation to Krishna for the pleasure of Krishna. And Bhishmadev is revealing that this is possible. text 14. Sarvakala kritam manye bhavatam cha yad apriyam sapalo yad vasheloko ya vayur iva ganad vali. In my opinion, this is all due to inevitable time under whose control everyone in every planet is carried, just as the clouds are carried by the winds, by the wind. So Bhishmadev is giving his conclusion to Yudhishthira Maharaj, who's seated next to him, that the suffering you went through, the suffering that Queen Kunti went through, the suffering that has impacted the whole of Hastinapur, practically the whole planet, this is all due to inevitable time, kalakritam. And everyone is under the control. In every planet, every single person is under the control of time, from Brahma right down to this insignificant Indragopa germ. Every single living entity is controlled by time, just as clouds are carried by the wind. Prabhupada says, there is control by time all over the space within the universe, as there is control by time all over the planets. All the big gigantic planets, including the sun, are being controlled by the force of air, as the clouds are carried by the force of air. Similarly, the inevitable kala or time controls even the action of air and the other elements. Everything, therefore, is controlled by the supreme kala, his forceful representative of the Lord within the material world. So everything is controlled by time. And therefore we find that time management is a misnomer. There is no question of time management. You can't manage time. Time is managing you. Time is controlling everyone. So when people says, let's talk about time management, let's manage time, you can't manage time. Yes, you can prioritize activities and decide which activities are more important and focus on those activities, but every single living entity is controlled by time. So that's the first point we have to appreciate. No one is free from the bound and the force of time. And Krishna also says that I am that time. So that means everyone is controlled by Krishna in the form of time. Thus, Yudhishthir should not be sorry for the inconceivable action of time. So now if everyone is controlled by time, including me, and Krishna says he is time, and therefore Krishna is controlling everyone and every circumstance. If Krishna is controlling every single circumstance, including Yudhishthir Maharaj's circumstance and situation, then we should not be sorry for the inconceivable action of time. Just like we find right now, people are so distracted and disturbed by the COVID pandemic. But we have to understand that every single situation is controlled by supreme time. Nobody is independent of time. Everyone is controlled by time. And because everyone is controlled by time, we know that Kala, the supreme Kala, and thus supreme Kala is Krishna's form, is controlling every situation within this world. We accept and do not become despondent. So Prabhupada in Bhishmadev is teaching us how to accept every situation and circumstance and not be derailed, defocused or disfocused because one is now depressed, disturbed, lamenting. This is not Krishna consciousness. Everyone has to bear the actions and reactions of time as long as one is within the conditions of the material world. So you may be suffering due to your past actions and reactions, or due to being in this material world, and this material world is governed by supreme time, and therefore there are certain activities within this planet and creation due to the time that we placed in, we have to accept. Just like, for example, we are in Kali Yuga. And because we're in Kali Yuga, then the influence of time will have its effect according to the characteristics of Kali Yuga, which we will have to accept. If we don't accept, we unnecessarily disturb ourselves and cannot practice spiritual life or grow effectively. So this quality of acceptance, accepting your situation, accepting the circumstance, accepting those around you, accepting every single arrangement made by the supreme form of time, or supreme color, this is important. Yudhishthir should not think that he had committed sins in his previous birth and is suffering the consequence. Even the most pious has to suffer the condition of material nature. So there may be something, there may be suffering that you're getting that's got nothing to do with your karma. It's simply the force of time that you are under the influence of, like Yudhishthira Maharaj, Queen Kunti, the pure devotees of the Lord. But a pious man is faithful to the Lord, for he is guided by the bona fide Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas, following the principle, religious principles. So now Prabhupada is coming back to what he shared in the previous purport, that the disturbance may be there. We do not get disturbed. We accept the circumstance and we continue to faithfully follow the Lord, be guided by the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas, and follow the principles of Dharma. We do not say, well, just see, I'm a devotee and this is still happening, therefore I'm not going to practice Krishna consciousness. It's unfair. Or it doesn't work. No, that is not the proper understanding. We continue faithfully taking shelter of these three guiding principles. Prabhupada says these three guiding principles should be the aim of life. One should not be disturbed by the tricks of eternal time. Even the great controller of the universe, Brahmaji, is under the control of time. Therefore, one should not grudge being thus controlled by time, despite being a true follower of religious principles. And this is why you see time and time again so many examples of great souls, pure devotees of the Lord, that go through so many undue suffering, but they never disturbed. They never grudged the situation. Consider Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was being whipped 22 marketplaces. He was chanting 192 rounds a day. He was Namacharya. He had the full blessing and shelter of the holy name. Yet he was whipped. But he never grudged the situation. He never said, this is unfair. My Lord, I'm chanting. Is this a result of chanting? This is unfair. No, he did not. This is the perspective. This is the mindset. This is the attitude that Bhishmadev is highlighting to Yudhishthira Maharaj, which we are getting through Srila Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purports. We need to cultivate this attitude of acceptance. No matter what happens in your life, understand and accept the circumstance. And by accepting, we can grow. We can move forward. We find even Lord Nityananda, when he was hit with a clay pot by Jagan Madai hit him. Still, he did not, he didn't say, do you know who you hit? I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No. He just said, don't worry about that. I still want you to chant the whole name of Krishna. So great souls, they don't look at the circumstance as unfair. They see it as the Supreme Lord's arrangement through the time factor, and they accept. I'd like to give an example in relation to the statement Prabhupada made that our actions and reactions, they may be coming from our past activities, and there may be actions and reactions that may not be due to our past activities. Maybe Krishna has introduced some actions and reactions in our lives that has nothing to do with our past, and therefore we accept. At the same time, there may be situations that are due to our past, and we may not be able to appreciate or see it. Is it Krishna's arrangement? Is it my past activities? Because we don't have that foresight. But the pure devotees of the Lord, they may have that foresight to be able to see. And we can give this example from Krishna book. I'll read. This is Krishna enters Mathura. While Krishna and Balaram were passing in this way, they saw a washerman and the dyer of clothing. Krishna was pleased to ask him for some nice clothing. He also promised that if the washerman would deliver the nicest dyed cloth to him, the washerman would become very happy, and all good fortune would be his. Now, when the washerman saw Krishna, he did not see Krishna according to the first slide that I presented. He's seeing Krishna just through his mundane eyes. Oh, who's this coming from Vrindavan? He's coming to Mathura and asking for this cloth. But Krishna gave him a blessing. That if you give me the nicest dyed cloth, you will become happy and all good fortune will be yours. Krishna was a good beggar. Krishna was not a beggar, nor was he in need of clothing. But by his request, he indicated that everyone should be ready to offer Krishna whatever he wants. That is the meaning of Krishna consciousness. Unfortunately, this washerman was a servant of Kamsa and therefore could not appreciate the demand of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the effect of bad association. He could have immediately delivered the clothing to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who promised him all good fortune, but being a servant of Kamsa, the sinful demon, could not accept the offer. Instead of being pleased, he was very angry and refused the Lord's request, saying, "How is it that you are asking for clothing which is meant for the king?" The washerman then began to instruct Krishna and Balaram, "My dear boys, in future don't be so impudent as to ask for things which belong to the king. Otherwise, you will be punished by the government men. They will arrest you and punish you, and you will be in difficulty. I have practically experienced this fact. Anyone who unlawfully wants to use the king's property is very severely punished." On hearing this, Lord Krishna, the son of Devaki, became very angry at the washerman, and striking him with the upper portion of his hand, he separated the man's head from his body. The washerman fell down dead on the ground. In this way, Lord Krishna confirmed the statement of the Brahma Samhita that every limb of his body is capable of doing everything he likes. Without a sword, by simply with his hand, he cut off the head of the washerman. This is proof that the Supreme Lord is omnipotent. If he wants to do something, he can do it without extraneous help. So many lessons in this episode. The lesson that we want to understand is, externally now, if I'm seeing the situation, there's the washerman, he's innocent. Krishna is asking for some clothes, and all of a sudden, he doesn't want to give Krishna the cloth, and Krishna chops his head off. And somebody may say, this is unfair. How can Krishna do this? Now, Prabhupada is saying that he didn't obey the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he got his reaction. And someone may say, well, Krishna's reaction is uncalled for. But if we understand deeper, the Acharyas explained that this washerman was the same washerman during Lord Ram's time. That washerman that found fault at the chastity of Mother Sita. So because that washerman found fault in the chastity of Mother Sita, who was chastity personified, then he had to get a reaction. And the reaction came in Dwapara Yuga. So he got his due reaction. So this is providence. What you do, providence will deliver that. In the form of time, it will administer every action that you performed with a suitable reaction. We may not appreciate, we may not understand, but it will be delivered. Another lesson is, if we see the situation, when we understand who Krishna is, we accept the situation, that this was the best arrangement. This is most suitable reaction. And we may not understand the circumstance, but we accept, because Krishna always does what is most conducive and the best in every circumstance. 15. Yatra dharma suto raja kadapani vrikrodara Krishna stri gandivam chapam surit Krishna's tato vipat. Oh, how wonderful is the influence of inevitable time. It is irreversible. Otherwise, how can there be reversals in the presence of King Yudhishthira, the son of the demigod controlling religion? Bhima, the great fighter with a club. The great bowman Arjuna with his mighty weapon Gandiva. And above all, the Lord, the direct well-wisher of the Pandavas. Bhishmadev is giving the evidence of why he says it is all by the power of Kala, by the power of providence, by the power of time. And his evidence is, how can these personalities, the Pandavas, go through reversals when they are so powerful? Each individually is powerful. What to talk about collectively? What to talk about with the Supreme Personality of Godhead as their friend and mentor and guide? Yudhishthira was a son of, he was the expansion of Dharma. Bhima, he had the power, the strength of 10,000 elephants. 10,000 strength of 10,000 elephants mean that if you put 10,000 elephants in a row, Bhima would hit the first elephant, and just the impact of the first elephant will kill the 10,000 elephant, and that elephant will drop dead. We can just imagine what will happen to the first elephant. And Arjuna, with his Gandiva bow, ambidextrous, he could fight in every single direction. Because as soon as he thought of his Gandiva bow could go into any of his hands. So he was very powerful. And then what to talk about the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is with them? Krishna himself is with them, yet they are suffering. This is not ordinary. It can only be due to time. Prabhupada in the purport says, as far as the material or spiritual resources were required, there was no scarcity in the case of the Pandavas. Materially, they were well equipped because two great warriors, namely Bhima and Arjuna, were there. Spiritually, the king himself was a symbol of religion. And above all of them, the personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, was personally concerned with their affairs as the well-wisher. And yet, there were so many reverses on the side of the Pandavas. So what's the lesson? The lesson is this: despite the power of pious acts, the power of personalities, the power of expert management, the power of weapons, under the direct supervision of the Lord Krishna, the Pandavas suffered so many practical reverses, which can only be explained as due to the influence of Kala, or inevitable time. Kala is identical with the Lord himself, and therefore the influence of time indicate the explicable wish of the Lord himself. There is nothing to be lamented when a matter is beyond the control of any human being. So the lesson that Prabhupada is re-emphasizing is that things happen. And when things happen because of inevitable time, we simply accept. Because this is the wish of the Lord. So accept the wish of the Lord. Do not fight it. Then Prabhupada is giving us the practical advice. There is nothing to be lamented when a matter is beyond the control of any human being. Do not lament, do not complain of things beyond your control. Do not waste your energy, your time, your resources complaining on things that you have no control of. So this is a very, very important lesson. We see Lord Nityananda. Lord Nityananda was extremely powerful. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Yet, he accepted situations as the wish of the Lord. When Lord Nityananda was traveling throughout India, he could have, as he was traveling, he could have started the Sankirtan mission. He could have started chanting Hare Krishna, because it was he who started it anyway. But he did not. Why? Because it was not the wish of the Lord. And Lord Nityananda was perfectly showing us to always abide by the wish of the Lord, even though you may be expert. Sri Mahaprabhu did not want to start the Sankirtan mission because the Lord has a timeline. We find even as Nimai, he didn't start the Sankirtan mission. Only when he took sannyas, then he started the Sankirtan mission. And then Lord Nityananda, when Lord Nityananda arrived, he then instructed Lord Nityananda. So we should always try to fulfill the wish of the Lord. In the form of time, we may find events and circumstances which are beyond our control, and understand that that's the wish of the Lord. Therefore, accept and do not lament. So Krishna is controlling time. Time is Krishna's energy. And therefore, Prabhupada is saying, because time is Krishna's energy, then really time will only act because it is Krishna's will. We also have to appreciate and understand that the administering of actions and reactions by time is always infallible. And we may never understand certain reactions, but we have to understand that it's always, always appropriate, truthfully applied, without any inch of discrepancy. So this principle that Prabhupada is mentioning in the last sentence, this is very important, and it's related to what we call the circle of concern and the circle of influence. We all have these two types of circles. There are those things that we are concerned of, and there are those things that we have influence of. Now, those things that we have influence of, we also concerned. So the circle of concern is the whole circle, including those things which we have influence of. So you could say that every single aspect in our life, we are concerned of. We're concerned of the weather, we're concerned of the government, we're concerned of our family, we're concerned about our health. We're concerned about our spiritual life. We can be concerned about everything. But within this circle of concern of everything we're concerned of, there's only a small part of areas or aspects of our lives that we're concerned of that we can influence by ourselves practically. We can do something about it. So instead of focusing on the blue, we want to focus on the yellow. Instead of focusing on the circle of concern where we have no influence, we want to focus on those things we are concerned and can influence. This way we will save ourselves from being frustrated or depressed or lament over. So we want to develop the attitude of no complaining. I will never complain about any circumstance or situation. If it's raining, then I don't need to complain that it's raining because I can't do anything about it. So therefore, I accept. And in fact, if I'm Krishna conscious, I can be even more, if not only accept, I can be grateful. Because without rain, how am I going to get rain? Right? So I can see it even in a Krishna conscious way. But the focus is on those things I can change. And those are the aspects. I don't want to complain, I don't want to procrastinate, but those things that I can change, I want to be proactive and work on those things. In this way, I do not waste my time, or I do not waste my energy in complaining, being frustrated, lamenting, etc. Because no matter how much you complain about a situation, nothing happens. Just like they say, you can't, cry over spilled milk, because that milk is not going to come back into the bottle. It's spilled, it's gone. So you don't cry about it. Rather, you have influence of the circumstance, so wipe it out. So in this way, Prabhupada is sharing, there is nothing to be lamented when a matter is beyond the control of any human being. And you find that so many people spend hours and hours on things they have absolutely no control of, and they go into the cycle of negativity, fault finding, criticism, complaining, bewilderment, depression, lack of motivation, because they're getting exposed to all these things and their attitude is not aligned to the attitude that Srila Prabhupada wants us to have. Text 16. Na hyasakar hichit rajan Pumam Veda Vidit Sitam Yat Vigni Nasaya Yukta Muyanti Kavayopi. O king, no one can know the plan of the Lord Shri Krishna, even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered. Prabhupada's purport. The bewilderment of Maharaj Yudhishthira over his past sinful acts and the resultant suffering, etc., is completely negated by the great authority Bhishma, one of the 12 authorized persons. Bhishma wanted to impress upon Maharaj Yudhishthira that since time immemorial, no one, including such demigods as Shiva and Brahma, could ascertain the real plan of the Lord. So what can we understand about it? It is useless also to inquire about it. So since everything is under Krishna's control, and Krishna is administering and directing and controlling every circumstance, then, and we accept that it's Krishna's plan, or within Krishna's plan, just like the statement says, everything is not Krishna's plan, but everything is within Krishna's plan. So it's connected to Krishna's plan. And it is impossible to understand what Krishna's plan is. The suffering of the Pandavas were never due to their past deeds. The Lord had to execute the plan of establishing the kingdom of virtue, and therefore his own devotees suffered temporarily in order to establish the conquest of virtue. Bhishmadev was certainly satisfied by seeing the triumph of virtue, and he was glad to see King Yudhishthira on the throne, although he himself fought against him. Even a great fighter like Bhishma could not win the battle of Kurukshetra because the Lord wanted to show that vice cannot conquer virtue, regardless of who tries to execute it. Darkness cannot overcome light. Vice cannot overcome virtue. So therefore, if you follow Dharma, you will always be victorious. And here is a beautiful example to prove that, to validate that. Even Bhishma, who was so powerful, that even though he tried to be on the wrong side to try to fight against Krishna, the Pandavas, he failed, even though he was so powerful. Bhishmadev was a great devotee of the Lord, but he chose to fight against the Pandavas by the will of the Lord because the Lord wanted to show that a fighter like Bhishma cannot win on the wrong side. So when people ask, how come Bhishmadev was a great devotee, was fighting on the wrong side? He was fighting against the Pandavas. Well, the reason he was fighting against the Pandavas was because it was Krishna's will. Krishna wanted to teach, no matter how powerful you are, how strong you are, how brilliant you are, how spiritual you are, how advanced you are, if you are on the wrong side, you are on the wrong side and you will fail. Similarly, no matter how weak you are, no matter how incapable you are, no matter how many obstacles you have, if you on the right side, if you are with Krishna's plan, you will always be victorious. Now, what's interesting is we find that we get ideas that come to us. We act on those ideas, or we plan those ideas, and then we act on those ideas. And in most cases, when I act on those ideas, then I say, I did it. It's because of me. So for example, I may decide to build a temple, and I make plans to build a temple. Then I carry out the action and I build the temple. And then I say, just see, I built the temple. But actually, I did not build the temple. And Prabhupada, in his poem, when he came to America, revealed very clearly our consciousness and attitude that we have to have. Prabhupada arrived and said that I'm the most insignificant beggar. I'm the most unfortunate. Make me a puppet, make me dance. Prabhupada didn't say I'm Bhaktivedanta, I'm very intelligent, I'm very expert. It was I who was chosen by my Guru Maharaj to come to the West and preach Krishna consciousness, and I'm going to make it happen. Nope, that was not his attitude. His attitude, even though Prabhupada was super qualified, his attitude was, I have no devotion, I have no knowledge, but I've been given this task. And therefore, I am begging, I am praying, make me, let me become a perfect puppet in your hands. So Prabhupada's praying to become totally dependent, becoming an instrument in the hands of Krishna. At the same time, Prabhupada didn't leave it in the hands of Krishna. He spent every single ounce of energy, resource, time, ability that he had, like everything dependent on him to make it a success. So this is the consciousness we have to develop. We want to be part of Krishna's plan. We want to choose the side of Krishna. Because if I choose the side of Krishna, I'm going with the flow. I'm going with the current. And by Krishna's mercy and blessings, he can empower me to be able to do what he desires, even though he may plant those ideas in my own consciousness in the first place. Because in every circumstance, every situation, there is an immediate cause, there's a remote cause, and there's the ultimate cause. Very often we look at the immediate cause and think, see, I did it. I was the cause of this. But we don't see that there's also a remote cause. We don't see that there's actually an ultimate cause. They are different causes. There are different doers according to Bhagavad Gita, and ultimately it is Krishna. Through time and through his sweet will, that's orchestrating and arranging every single thing in this creation, or sanctioning every single thing in this creation. So therefore, if you side with Krishna on the right side of Dharma, no matter how many trials and tribulations you're going to face, like Yudhishthira Maharaj, you will come out successful. Against all odds. Krishna did not fight on their side. They had half the size of the army. Bhishma Dev, Dronacharya, Kripacharya, all were powerful warriors on the opposite side. Yet, the Pandavas came successful because Krishna was there, because they were on the side of Dharma. So always stay on the right side. Similarly, we find Bhishma, even though he was a Mahajan, even though he was a great warrior, Dronacharya, who could never be killed, such a powerful warrior, Dronacharya could practically destroy the whole army himself of the Pandavas. Still, they were defeated because they were on the wrong side. So this should instill faith in us to always abide by Dharma, always stay on the side of Krishna, because you will be safe on Krishna's side. We touched on this in terms of accept Krishna's plan. So we've shared the example of the washerman. In terms of his karma, he had to get his due reaction. At the same time, because Krishna is there, then whatever Krishna is doing, it's perfect. I do not question it. I do not doubt it. I understand that I may not be able to see all the variables and all the pieces, all the past karma, all the permutations of karma, but I know one thing, I trust Krishna. One time, Prabhupada told the devotees, don't even trust me, always trust Krishna. Because Prabhupada was illustrating that as human beings, we are fallible. As living entities, we are fallible. Sometimes people lose great trust and faith when the spiritual masters have challenges. But Prabhupada himself revealed, don't trust me. See, Prabhupada is teaching, trust only Krishna. Why? What's the principle? Not that Prabhupada would cheat us, but the fact is, Prabhupada is making it very clear, Krishna will never, ever cheat. In the material world, as living entities, those who are conditioned and those who are pure may or may not break our trust. But Krishna will never break one's trust. Krishna will always do what's best. Therefore, we should trust Krishna in every single circumstance. And we have to learn to accept. And we can learn to accept, or we can learn that lesson even from Lord Balaram himself, who, even though he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who knew Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's plan, who had full capacity and ability and power to spread Krishna consciousness, could to give mercy. You know, he didn't go village to village and thinking, oh, just he was on pilgrimage throughout India. He didn't say, oh, yeah, you know, these people are not getting the mercy. You know, Lord Chaitanya is delaying this whole thing. You know, I should spread Krishna consciousness myself. You know, forget about Lord Chaitanya. Let me just do it. No, he was faithful and accepted. This is the Lord's plan. Everything has its time. When the Lord wishes, when the Lord desires, it will happen. Let me just do what I have to do at this very point in time. So if we want to be peaceful, we should accept the plan of the Lord. We are put into circumstances, situations to learn this lesson. We are surrounded by individuals, people we like, people we dislike, to learn this lesson. When we learn this lesson of acceptance, of accepting the circumstance, of accepting the situation we're in, and make that the foundation to grow, we'll be peaceful. Sometimes we'll be able to see it's Krishna's plan, and that'll inspire us. But very often we may not be able to interpret and understand Krishna's plan. As Prabhupada is making very clear, even great demigods like Lord Shiva and Brahma cannot understand Krishna's plan. So don't, just accept. Now, when we accept circumstances, situations, people around us, it doesn't mean we don't, it doesn't mean we do nothing. We still have free will to act. Remember the circle of concern and the circle of influence. I want to move my attention from the circle of concern, where I don't have influence, to the circle of concern where I have influence, like my health. I can do things about my health. I can do things in relation to my own Krishna consciousness, my attitude, etc. So we have free will, and we can apply our free will in 4 ways. We can apply our free will in terms of modeling. That means we can be good models for others, for our dependents, for our friends, colleagues, for our students. So I can be a good model. I can be a good mentor. So role model, first one. I can be a mentor. I can be a guide. I can have loving exchanges in terms of respectful, appreciative, forgiving, kind, compassion. So that I have control of, that I have influence. I can apply myself in that. I can organize and teach through organization or help through organization, whether it's organizing the family, organizing, society, or any aspect of organization. So I can improve and guide and help through organization. And I can help through teaching to those that have faith and trust in me, that are willing to accept good guidance. So in this way, I can use my time directed to these 4 aspects in every single situation, and do not waste time on things that I have no control over. Because I want to use every single ounce of energy productively. And we learn this from Srila Prabhupada. If you study Srila Prabhupada's life, Srila Prabhupada never did anything to waste time. He did everything to expand Krishna consciousness, to increase spiritual life, to share Krishna consciousness, to please Krishna. We need to learn to mold our life in this way by understanding what Bhishmadev is sharing in terms of why things happen in our lives, why things happen in other devotees' lives, why things happen in pure devotees' lives. So Bhishmadev started off with explaining that Yudhishthira Maharaj, you've gone through so many trials and tribulations. Not only you, even your mother went through so many trials and tribulations. There was no need for you all, because it's not due to past karma. I mean, you are Dharmaraj. You have so many powerful brothers. You have Krishna by your side. So it's not due to past karma. It is due to inevitable time. And inevitable time is controlled by Krishna. In fact, it's Krishna's wish, Krishna's plan. And therefore, because it's Krishna's wish and Krishna's plan, Bhishmadev is now concluding. Tasmad idam devam tantram vyavasya paratar shaba. Tasyano vihito nata pahi praja prabho. O best among the descendants of Bharata, Yudhishthira, I maintain, therefore, that all this is within the plan of the Lord. Accepting the inconceivable plan of the Lord, you must follow it. You are now the appointed administrative head. And my Lord, you should now take care of those subjects who are now rendered helpless. So Bhishmadev is concluding that because this is the plan of the Lord, which is inconceivable, you are now been put in the situation by the plan of the Lord. It is the desire of the Lord. Everything happened by the will of the Lord, by the plan of the Lord. Krishna was the script director. He wrote the script. And if he wrote a script, then he wrote it for a purpose. It's his desire, so just accept it. And now, because he has written the script for you to now rule, you take that as Krishna's service and become responsible and do what is required. Prabhupada in the purport talks about this Devatantram, enchantment of providence only. The popular saying is that a housewife teaches the daughter-in-law by teaching the daughter. Similarly, The Lord teaches the world by teaching the devotee. The devotee does not have to learn anything new from the Lord, because the Lord teaches the sincere devotee always from within. Whenever, therefore, a show is made to teach the devotee, as in the case of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, it is for the teaching the less intelligent man. A devotee's duty, therefore, is to ungrudgingly accept tribulations from the Lord as a benediction. The Pandavas were advised by Bhishmadev to accept the responsibility of administration without hesitation. The poor subjects were without protection due to the battle of Kurukshetra, and they were waiting at the assumption of the power of Maharaj Yudhishthira. A pure devotee of the Lord accepts tribulations as the favor from the Lord, since the Lord is absolute. There is no mundane difference between the two. Such a powerful statement Prabhupada concludes. So the first point Prabhupada makes is Krishna uses his devotees to teach us. So Yudhishthira Maharaj is really, under Krishna's plan, put into ignorance, not seeing its inevitable time, not seeing Krishna's plan, only so that Bhishmadev could instruct Yudhishthira Maharaj so that we could get these instructions. Otherwise, we wouldn't have. So just see, Krishna is so kind that he is putting his devotees in situations so that we can get the relevant instructions for perfecting our lives. And in this way, we find chapter after chapter of the Bhagavatam is revealing the proper consciousness, the proper mindset, the proper attitude, the proper perspective that we all need to imbibe and follow for us to be perfect and perfectly Krishna conscious. We should not be blaming Arjuna. We should not be blaming Yudhishthira Maharaj, but they are showing our state that if we don't see the plan of the Lord, if we don't act just like Yudhishthira Maharaj was thinking, it's because of me. I was the cause of all these soldiers being killed on the battlefield, causing so much harm and pain. He's thinking he's the cause. This is the false ego. This is the mind, where we think we are the doers. Now Bhishmadev is revealing to him, you were simply the instrument. This is all Krishna's arrangement. And if Krishna uses you as an instrument, then simply accept it that way. See, when a master uses an instrument that is unconscious, then there's no glory to that. But when a master uses an instrument that is fully conscious as an instrument, and that is glorious. Because someone who is fully conscious has an independent free will to react. But when we react according to Krishna's desire, this is perfect spiritual oneness. One with the desire of Krishna. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes Lord Nityananda was more one than one. He was more one than the one desire that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had to come and deliver everyone. Because Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to kill Jagai Madai, especially Madai. But Lord Nityananda said, no, my Lord, you didn't come for this. So Lord Nityananda was reminding Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about his desire, his true desire. So we want to align, we want to become perfect instruments, conscious instruments of the will, the wish, the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this requires us to take the mind and offer it completely at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through chanting the holy name of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. When Krishna says that the mind is the only obstacle between you and him, this is what he means. Because the mind will distract you. The mind will focus on everything that you should not be focusing on. The mind will be your worst enemy and make you think that you're doing everything. When you are able to take that mind and control it in Krishna consciousness through the mercy and blessings of the Lord, and allow your mind to lock into becoming an instrument, then the Lord can allow his plan to be manifested through you as an instrument. So we all praying for service. We all praying to Krishna. Please engage me in your service. Engage me in your plan. That means we don't want to be the obstacle. We don't want to be in the way. And the suffering that is plagued, that is on devotees of the Lord. Prabhupada says a pure devotee of the Lord accepts tribulations as the favors of the Lord, from the Lord. Since the Lord is absolute, there is no mundane difference between the two. That means mercy and tribulations is exactly the same. It is the sweet nectarian mercy of Krishna, because Krishna is absolute. Therefore, anything connected to Krishna, coming from Krishna, is Krishna's mercy and Krishna's favor. And Bhishmadev is instructing Yudhishthira Maharaj. This is how he needs to see the situation, accept it, and now take full responsibility and act. In conclusion, when Yudhishthira Maharaj meets Bhishmadev in the Mahabharata, Yudhishthira Maharaj asks 6 questions to Bhishmadev. Very profound 6 questions. And I'm going to read the question and the answer that Yudhishthira Maharaj asks and Bhishmadev responds. This is found in the Purva Pitaka of the Mahabharata. So the first question Yudhishthira Maharaj asks, who is the supreme deity in the world? And Bhishmadev responds, he who is the most pure of all sacred things, the very sanctity. He who is the most auspicious among all auspicious. He who is God of all gods. He who is eternal Father of all creatures. Second question, who is the one and only refuge for all? He is a great effulgence. He who is the great controller. He who is the supreme all-pervading truth. He who has the highest goal. He is the refuge. Question 3, by glorifying whom can seekers reach the auspiciousness? Answer, the Supreme Purusha, who is the Lord of the world and endless, the highest being who can be approached through meditation, praise, and adoration. Question 4, by worshipping whom can seekers, it's actually the same question. Right, so the first one is whom can you worship? The second one is what's the means of achieving true auspiciousness? By worshiping and meditating on him, men can reach through auspiciousness. Question 5, which Dharma is the greatest Dharma of them all? Answer, by adoring whom, and question 6 also, so there's 2 questions. Which Dharma is the greatest Dharma of them all? By adoring whom do creatures go beyond the bondage of life? answer to 5 and 6. The greatest Dharma is Vishnu, who has neither a beginning nor an end, Supreme Lord of the world. He who daily chants Sahasra Nama, the glories of the knower of the world, goes beyond the bondage of life and all sorrows. So this is the 6 questions that Yudhishthira Maharaj asks, and Bhishmadev is responding. And next week, we're going to hear the Bhagavatam's perspective to these answers in terms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Bhishmadev is going to now move his attention to the Supreme Lord, Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanande Hari Hari Bo. Any questions or comments anyone has, please type that in the chat. And next week, we will be covering chapter 1, Canto 1, chapter 9, verses 18 to 24. Any questions, comments, clarification on what we've covered? Mata Achani Siddhi says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the very nice class. Regarding verse 13, what actions of the Pandavas made Queen Kunti suffer? They gambled in the match, Yudhishthira Maharaj, because he gambled. And he placed his sons, his brothers, as bets. And he placed his wife as a bet. So that was a cause of great suffering. Any other questions, comments? Queen Kunti had, naturally the mother feels for the children, so they were put in so much suffering, and that's caused Queen Kunti great pain. All right. There's no other questions. We'll just give it one more minute. Shamananda Prabhu says, Hare Krishna, thanks for the wonderful nectar, really full of guidance and instruction to help us understand things better. Can you share something from your slide, from your side, on some reversal obstacles and how you overcame and saw Krishna's hand at some time? Yes, plenty. Everyone goes through reversals. They're not unique. So I remember when I joined in 91, the Hillbrow Temple, and maybe after about 2 years, 3 years, we went through a few temple presidents, and then at about maybe 93, 94, I was managing, myself and Madhuri Dasi were managing the restaurant, the Govinda's restaurant at that time. And we practically, 2 of us managed the whole restaurant, both from cooking, shopping, preparing, cooking, serving, and then cultivating guests. So we did this and was wonderful service. So when when doing this, at one point, one of the managers, they came and they said, we were stealing from the till. And when they said I was stealing from the till, that caused me to react in a way that I said, this is unfair. It's like, we putting all our energy, rendering the service, knowing that this is all for Krishna, and then you get accused unfairly. So I reacted. Naturally, I was heartbroken. At that time, you could say I was like a softie. So somebody said something bad about me, and I started to cry, and I said, this is unfair. And how can they say, okay, we stole, etc. And we decided, okay, that's it. We're going to move and relocate to India. So in that situation, there was a trigger, there was a circumstance that triggered an emotional response. That emotional response triggered a reactive behavior, and we decided, let's sell everything and move to India. So we sold everything, lock, stock, and barrel. And we flew to India to stay full-time in India. We sent, communicated with Giriraj Maharaj that we, going to India, we like, some service there. So we landed in India, sold everything. One, basically whatever luggage, clothing we had, we're in India now. And we're having a meeting now with Giriraj Maharaj, and it's like in December. And Giriraj Maharaj says, there's someone by the name of Briyat Prabhu, that time, Bhakti Briyat Bhagu Maharaj, Briyat Matanga Prabhu. He's starting the college, and he needs someone to help him. So maybe if you can go to Durban and see, what his request is, if you can assist him, and then decide. So then we flew back to Durban. And now in Durban. And then, we have a chat in regards to starting the college, etc. So, so that's great. And I'll tell you why, because there's a underlining storyline behind that. And it so happened that the situation in Hillbrow had become so bad that because of bad leadership, that the temple devotees, they came for Rath Yatra. That time Durban Rath Yatra was in December. And none of the temple devotees, including all the pujaris, were going to return back to the temple. They told the GBCs that we are not going back to the temple if you do not replace the temple president. Because the temple president was not an ideal temple president as per Srila Prabhupada's instructions. Let's put it that way, mildly. And we went through 7 temple presidents in Hillbrow. So they said, we're not going back. The temple president, and he had one of his assistants, they can go back and they can run the temple. We're not going. None of the temple devotees decided to go. There were like 13 devotees, about 13 devotees. So they were forced to change the temple president. So then they called me in. Giriraj Maharaj was GBC. And obviously they asked the devotees who should be the temple president. They said me. So then Giriraj Maharaj calls me and he said, the temple devotee is not going back. You have to be temple president. I said, I know I can't be temple president. And I said, well, okay, I'll only be temple president if you instruct me and guide me because Prabhupada trained you. So then Giriraj Maharaj said yes. So then I came back, 95. I came back to Hillbrow. I became a temple president, and then I started the college and started to study and teach Prabhupada's books. And under the guidance of Giriraj Maharaj, we managed the temples. Now, I reacted due to, there's another aspect to this also, 2 aspects. One is this lesson, this was in 91. I then, let's say after many years in 2003, when I joined Daimler Chrysler, worked full-time outside, I then went for a personal development course. And in a personal development course, I used this as an example. And the lesson that I learned was people can say anything to you, but you always have the choice of responding properly. And it was a dysfunctional belief system that I had, that nobody can call me a thief. Nobody can call me dishonest. That was a dysfunctional belief system. I had to reword it, I had to change that. And I changed that anyone can say anything to me because they are free to say whatever. They're free, they have independence. But I have a choice to accept or reject, right? Not to react. And Krishna knows everything. Krishna knows the truth. So that, after years, I obviously understood that it was my dysfunctional belief system that allowed me to react in that way. But I also saw it after I came back, I saw that actually it was Krishna's arrangement. Why? Because when I joined in 91, I became the temple commander, and practically, like a temple commander means do everything that everybody doesn't want to do. So I would practically sleep like 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, get up at 3, 4 o'clock, and that was my schedule. Then I became vice president, I became temple president, and because I was so busy, I never had the opportunity to study and teach. And I always wanted to study and teach, but I got so involved in services that I never had the opportunity to teach. But my desire was there. So Krishna made arrangements to send me to Vrindavan. And when I was in Vrindavan, I went to Kamyavan. And in Kamyavan, I bathed in the dust of Kamyavan and explained that in Kamyavan, even in whole of Vrindavan, but specifically in Kamyavan, any desire you make gets fulfilled, spiritual desire. So in Kamyavan, I was praying like anything. My Lord, please make arrangements so I can study and teach Prabhupada's books. And then all of a sudden, I find myself coming back to South Africa, back to Durban, back to Joburg, exactly the same temple that I originally decided to leave and became the temple president so that I could devise my schedule and put Prabhupada's books as the priority to study and teach. And that's how we started the Bhaktivedanta College in Lenasia, Marlborough, Wynberg, Pretoria. And that's how at different places we had an opportunity to serve Srila Prabhupada in this way. So this is one example of how a reversal, as simple as somebody, finding a fault in my character, triggered a reversal, which I see as Krishna's plan to change the people, change the environment, allow me to be able to decide what I want to do, especially study and teach, fulfill my desire. And then years later, I also realized that it was actually my dysfunctional belief system that Krishna exploited, used to fulfill my spiritual desire. So many lessons from there. So I hope that's put some light on your request. Vasaraj Prabhu says, we have learned that we have to accept Krishna's plan. Yes. And here's the challenge. You don't know Krishna's plan, because Krishna's plan can be very complicated and complex. At least we know Lord Chaitanya's plan. We know Prabhupada's plan. So therefore, if you follow Lord Chaitanya's plan, you follow Prabhupada's plan, you're in safe hands. Viresh Prabhu says, Hare Krishna, you mentioned, Prabhupada mentioned that the mind is only separating factor that comes between human beings and the Lord. What then is or are the connecting body-related attribute factors available that human possess, if not the same mind? So Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that the mind is between you and the super soul. And when the mind is conquered, the super soul is already reached. So remember, the bodily functions, they function under the dictation of the mind. The mind is the central pivot. And your inner being reflects externally onto the physical side. So really, it's the mind that is the main sense that needs to be directed towards Krishna. If you direct the mind in the right direction, the other senses follow. Krishna consciousness means we take all the other bodily faculties and senses and employ that in the service of Krishna. So we're doing both. We are directing the mind to the lotus feet of Krishna, and we directing the senses also in the direct direction of Krishna. So by directing the mind and the senses and the intelligence and the ego, we're directing everything in the service of Krishna. So we're trying to address this issue most effectively through Krishna consciousness. Hope that explains a little. Mother Les says, thank you for the Krishna Katha. How glorious was it for the washerman to see Krishna at a time of death and be killed directly by the hand of Krishna? That's true. He must have been a great devotee. He gets liberation even though he seemed to be covered by Maya, and the devotee was there to settle his final karmic account by the mercy of Krishna. The devotee gets Krishna's ultimate mercy. What a glorious death. So just see, he found fault with Mother Sita. Therefore, he was liable for punishment. He was meant to get his reaction. He was on the demonic side. He was on the side of Kamsa. So he was demonic by nature. He had bad association. So he was on the wrong side. But Krishna is so kind. Krishna didn't come and say, okay, you're going to get your reaction for finding fault with my Radhavani. By finding fault what Sita did. It was an expansion of Radhavani. You rascal. Krishna didn't say. Krishna was compassionate. Krishna gave him a chance. And the chance was, give me some clothes, give me some nice dyed clothes, and I will promise you happiness and no misery. So Krishna gave him an alternate, gave him an option. This is Krishna's kindness. He did not take that option because of his bad association. He couldn't see that, hold on, Krishna is giving me an option here. It's Krishna's mercy. Krishna didn't need to give him an option, but Krishna gave him that option. And similarly, Krishna doesn't need to give us an option, but he gives us an option in Krishna consciousness in so many ways. Because he didn't select the option, Krishna then gave him the due punishment. At the same time, as you mentioned, because Krishna killed him and he's in front of Krishna, he still gets the blessing. He becomes liberated. All the warriors, even on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, got liberated. This is Krishna's mercy. So if the demons, if those who are on the bad side, those who have bad association and do not recognize Krishna's position, if they are killed and get Krishna's mercy and become liberated, what to talk about those who sincerely want to dedicate, serve, and surrender their lives to wonderful Krishna? Lakan sent a message as well. How can we differentiate our mind plan and Krishna's plan? Yes. So we can understand our mind's plan and Krishna's plan via Guru Sadhu Shastra. That is why we need Krishna in form of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam to direct us. We need the pure devotees like Srila Prabhupada, spiritual masters to direct us, the Vaishnavas to direct us. So in this way, by having the devotees association, by the spiritual masters association, by the scriptures association, we can understand whether it's my mental concoction or whether it's Krishna's desire or the spiritual master's desire. And in this way, we always have to check, because the mind can be very, very mischievous. The mind can distract. The mind can be very powerful in taking us to the wrong destination and direction and telling us that it's the right direction. This is the nature of the mind. So we have to be very, very careful. All right. Thank you very much for everyone's questions and comments. We will end here and continue next week, verses 18 to 24. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanande, Hari Hari Bo.